I'm Stan Larimer, president of Cryptonomics.
I'm Michael Taggart, and I am the founder of Remedio.com and co-founder of Heronomics.
And I am Toni Lane Casserly. I am the co-founder of Cointelegraph.
Hi everyone, my name is Shazad Barwani, and I am the co-founder of FinTech Austin here in beautiful Austin, Texas. Today we've invited the industry leaders in digital currency to talk about cryptocurrency and blockchain. So just to start off, what is blockchain?
A blockchain is just a decentralized ledger. And the important thing about all the digital currency things you're going to hear about is the difference between something being centralized and something being decentralized.
Okay.
When it's centralized, you have counterparty risk. That means somebody else, man in the middle, might do something or might be attacked by somebody else and cause you to lose your money or lose your data. When it's decentralized, it's spread out around the world in a whole bunch of self-checking robots.
Right. With that, we're going to talk about money, right? That's what everyone wants to use blockchain for, money. And the next natural question is about Bitcoin. So how does Bitcoin fit into the larger picture of blockchain, and how is it being used?
So Bitcoin is essentially a world decentralized currency that enables actually not just the internet, but the internet of money.
So basically, Bitcoin is built on top of the blockchain. And if I understand you correctly, what that means is if I owe you money and I owe you 20 bucks, we write that down on a piece of paper. Essentially, that piece of paper is now the note that guarantees that I owe you money. But someone can go in and say, oh, you know what, I owe you $10, and that would change it. What it sounds like you're saying is because it's decentralized, meaning it's not in one central location, everyone has access to that notepad and can check if it's been changed from 20 to 10, right?
Yes.
Correct.
And a blockchain is nothing but a sheet of paper electronically, but let's think of it as a sheet of paper that we write down these IOUs on and these send monies to different people on. And after 10 minutes, that gets locked down and put in a 3-ring binder. And we get a new clean sheet of paper and start doing that again and put it into binder.
Right.
And that binder full of sheets of paper about transactions is the blockchain. Each one of those sheets of paper is a block, and the binder is a chain.
Gotcha.
And they're all tied together cryptographically.
So talking about cryptographically and cryptocurrency, so people talk about blockchain and security a lot. Why is that? What's the secret sauce behind it? Why is it so secure in like simple terms?
Well, pretty much the way it works is that everybody asks, why is it called cryptocurrency? It's because it's encrypted. It's using encryption technology, SHA-256, or a script type of technology to encrypt everything. All of the data is encrypted at such a level where it's not really possible with today's computers to be able to just brute force it or hack it or be able to get inside of it. So it's pretty much at this point the most safe method of transmitting funds from point A to point B.
In order to participate in the decentralized currency, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, whatever, I have to put my money into a centralized exchange which I don't trust necessarily as much as I do with Bank of America or the government, but like an online exchange. And that's a pretty big no for me if I had to put my money in, because I know there's probably a better hacker than the security than at that one central location.
Yeah, that is a huge problem, and there is a super simple answer, of which I'll kind of take the first part, which is don't put your money, don't keep it in a decentralized exchange.
Okay.
In and out, in and out. Like you're literally going in there, send the money, do the transaction, get your currency out, and be done. If you are keeping your money in a centralized, in an organization that leads with centralized authority, you understand that you're taking on that kind of risk. You can lose, everything at once in many different instances in this industry, actually.
Right.
And the beauty of this technology, though, is that just what exists is not the full potential. And we actually can create something that's more like a decentralized exchange, which I think Stan is very well equipped to talk about that.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
The idea is it's not that risky to briefly pass through a centralized exchange.
Okay.
As she says, in and out. or ideally in and deeper in. And when I mean in and deeper in, I mean you're passing from ordinary currencies like US dollars or euros or whatever through this shell of an interface provided by a centralized exchange that has the licenses to translate between the different things, and then exactly out and deeper into a decentralized exchange, which gives you the ability to trade and have total control of your assets and different kinds of assets without any human in the loop.
Right.
Interesting.
And what's great about that too, Stan, is that when people use the decentralized exchanges, the risk of hacking is pretty much null. The only thing that can really happen is that a hacker could potentially access one person's account, but they would have to, if there's a billion people using the decentralized exchange, they'd have to hack a billion separate accounts to get access to any of those funds or any of that. And that is huge. That's huge. Because right now, once they're in that database, they live in that database and they're able to take, we saw Target, Home Depot, Chase Bank, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, I can keep on going. And so this keeps happening and keeps happening. It's irresponsible of companies and exchanges to continue to operate in this format when there is a technology right now, like the blockchain, that can do this and actually save customer data. Because the industry of information system security is hundreds of billions of dollars a year in just securing user data alone.
Yeah, so what it sounds like is if you're going to do it at an exchange, put your money in and then take it out. Or what Stan is trying to say, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, is we can actually use a decentralized system similar to Bitcoin for the exchange in and of itself, which means you have a decentralized currency and a decentralized exchange. So, and I think that's pretty, is that what it sounds like?
Correct, and it's also a payment network.
Payment network, okay.
Right.
So you could think of Bitcoin, the original, as being a little unmanned robotic company that did just one function, which kept track of who owns the tokens known as Bitcoins.
Right.
And someone suggested, well, then why can't we pretend those are coins? And people started using them for that. We recognized that if you could put that simple company on there, why couldn't you put a whole exchange, ability to create lots of different kinds of coins and trade them and put all that functionality in on that same robotically honest network.
Gotcha. Interesting. So I think that kind of solves a bit of the issue that I was having with, if I put my money in a centralized location and then I get cryptocurrency, I'm still vulnerable. But now that it's decentralized, I can't be hacked by myself because it's not a central location. You would have to hack every single one of them, which would be the same probability as hacking the Bitcoin in and of itself.
Pretty much.
Well, the problem with the centralized exchange is they create this big honeypot with everybody's Bitcoins and other currencies all in one account under one key. Well, that's worth my time as a hacker to pound away at it, relentlessly, day in and day out, hundreds of computers trying to crack the code, and eventually I figure it out. It's not really worth my time to do that to, Joe or Cindy's little account that they've got in their own personal wallet, right?
Gotcha, yeah.
So when you spread things out and everybody's responsible for their own keys, it's not worth hacking.
I also know of Coinbase, and for those who don't know, Coinbase is a website where you can literally give your dollars and they give you Bitcoin. And what it sounds like is that is a centralized place where you can put your dollars, get Bitcoin, but that is also very vulnerable to attack.
Well, we would still use it in a business operation where our software on our website would go to Coinbase and say, here's some US dollars, give us some Bitcoin, and that transaction is a little bit of money to them, a little Bitcoin back, we've got control of it. There was not a big exposure there. The problem is if we were to put a lot of money on Coinbase and let it sit there day in and day out, there's a longer period of time for people to figure out how to get at it. So we use it all the time in business processes, but don't leave it there.
Like what Tony was saying is that you want to put your money in and take it out right away. And then in terms of leaving it in there versus not leaving it in there, what you're proposing, how is it different than what Coinbase does, which is, I guess you're saying, houses the money, and how, in the real world, what does that mean as far as me as a person on an exchange?
With with that, there's two different things to consider. Number one, if you have your money in there and you park it in there, and say Coinbase isn't really, it's an exchange, but not really much of an exchange. There's not a lot of active trading among, 50, 100,000 coins or anything like that. You have it parked in there. And as Stan said earlier, it's a honeypot. That's a big target on it, and there's hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars potentially sitting in there. They're going to want that. What I always recommend to people, because I talk to a lot of people about this, is that if you're going to trade cryptocurrencies, you're going to go to these exchanges where you're trading, and it's almost like stock exchanges where they're going back and forth. Unless you're actively trading at that moment, you need to move your coins out of that centralized exchange, because there's not just one honeypot, Coinbase, there's hundreds if not thousands of exchanges that are all centralized out there, and they're all honeypots.
Yeah, so why do they call them coins? I guess.
I think it's the easiest way to quantify something that we don't yet have the language to understand.
It's familiar, right?
It's super familiar, it's super connected, people understand what a coin is, because it's really just, at the end of the day, money is just information, and everything we're talking about here, it's just value.
Right.
It's that value as a model the ownership has been so consolidated, right? Often into the hands of a very small few. We're in a transition right now as a humanity from capitalism to protocolism. And the way that we think about the very concept of ownership is going to change in terms of the way wealth, value, any of this can be distributed back into the hands of the human race.
And coins are really something that we've been dealing with as a human race for a few thousand years, if not more than that. But to put it in perspective, a coin or a token. Let's talk about a token for a minute. How many people actually?
I hear token, coin, and I want to make sure that, aside from in the abstract, I understand coin terms, but what actually is a coin?
It's kind of the same thing. Think about it. How many people here, when you were growing up, went to an arcade and put money in there and they spit out a bunch of tokens?
Okay, right.
You could spend them in the arcade, but you couldn't really spend them anywhere else, right?
Okay.
It was a closed loop for you.
Gotcha.
They still had value within that area. So that's a token, right?
Yeah.
Now there's lots of other tokens out there. How many people here have airline miles?
Right.
Tokens.
Token.
Right?
Okay.
How many people have credit card points? Tokens, right?
Awesome.
Same thing as this too, as a storage of value. I was talking to somebody the other day and I said, there's a straw sitting on the table right there. How many people here think that straw is worth $1 million? Everybody says it's not. And I said, what if Elvis had used that straw? That's a token at that point to be traded around.
Right.
Art is a token.
Okay, so just to kind of clarify, what is the difference between a coin? So a coin is what you put in as a key, as some sort of something that gets you access to a token?
Well,
A coin is a type of token.
Okay, a coin is a type of token. Okay.
That's one of the things you can use tokens for. Let me take you back to the very dawn of Bitcoin history.
Okay. I like that.
Satoshi Nakamoto, the person or group that invented Bitcoin in the first place, started a little piece of software that could pass ownership of something called a token, which is just a blank sheet of paper that you could pass around that might mean something.
Right.
And Satoshi suggested to people, this could be a currency someday. You could think of these tokens as coins. Well, a few geeks out there said, wow, that's cool. And they bought up, they bought 1 million of them because they were worth less than a penny, right? And then somebody else started trading back, and the more they talked about it, and more people like Tony said exciting things about what they might be, they started being worth a penny here, a penny there. When they got up to the point where they were worth maybe a dollar or so, somebody said, gee, I could gather up a bunch of them and send them to somebody on the other side of the planet.
Right.
And that person could cash them out again, and I just transferred value.
Right.
As soon as they said, wow, that's cool, I bought a pizza on the other side of the planet with this thing, other people started doing it. And now it's supply and demand because there's a fixed supply of those tokens, and more people want them to do it, to do something with. And that's how we got from pennies per token to $4,000+ per token. Token is over time, more and more demand, and of course there's some speculation, people saying, well, gee, if it's worth $1,000 today, it'll probably be worth $5,000 in a few months. I want some just to put in my savings account. And that combination of real utility of sending money somewhere and speculation that more people will want it in the future is what's driven it up
Gotcha.
from pennies to thousands of dollars.
Sometimes they're not even creating a coin necessarily to use like Bitcoin. Sometimes they're not doing that. Sometimes they're saying, we're going to create a computer application that does this, 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 and this,
Gotcha.
and we're going to just give you these tokens that are similar to shares in a company.
Okay.
That's really what it is. So these tokens are just treated as
Right.
some shares in a company.
But the important thing people need to understand is different tokens, you can have many tokens of different types
Right.
on the same blockchain, on the same network,
Right, right.
if you will. And I just described how Bitcoin got its value natively
Right.
by people wanting it. Nobody was promising anything on the outside.
Right.
It was just, it had use and people speculated on it.
Yeah.
That is a pure, counterparty-free, risk-free type of currency.
Right, right.
But I can create another token that says, hey, this token's valuable because I'll trade it for an ounce of gold.
Right.
Okay? Well, now it's my reputation and whether I really have gold back in my basement somewhere
Right, right.
and whether I really will be around in a couple years to redeem it, that determines whether that token has value.
Gotcha.
Okay? And ICOs are people promising that you get a share of my company.
Okay.
Okay, and I'll give you have expectation that when my company goes up in value,
Right.
that your coin will go up in value just like playing the stock market.
Yeah.
Except when you start doing that, you start violating regulations everywhere.
Gotcha.
And so a lot of people, and there's regulations exist for a good reason.
Right.
Okay, so many people. Back in the 1920s, when these regulations came along, they came along because people were scamming people. They were offering shares in a company that didn't exist.
Right.
People would buy up the shares thinking they had something, and then find out that the guys went and bought a yacht and disappeared.
Right. Right.
We as an industry need to regulate ourselves, or we're going to have that regulation
Yeah.
put on us.
The majority of the capital is coming from the same, like 60% of people who would all be accredited investors anyway.
Right.
And so giving people the ability to participate in this market, as an unregulated source of redistribution of wealth and capital, it is of utmost paramount importance that process remains distributed and that we don't keep people out of the market of making wealth merely because they don't already have it.
ICOs have been happening consistently now, and for the last 6 to 12 months, there's just been a big uptick in them. I mean,
absolutely.
everybody's starting to hear ICO.
Yeah.
Initial public offering is an IPO. An ICO is an initial coin offering. It's very much similar to it in that they're allowing people to then invest in a particular project.
And ICOs are people promising that you get a share of my company.
Okay.
Okay, and I'll give you have expectation that when my company goes up in value,
Right.
that your coin will go up in value just like playing the stock market.
Let's just look at it like this. A lot of companies are just looking to raise money.
Right.
Unfortunately, with an IPO, there's a lot of legal regulations and
Right, right.
loopholes are existing right now for people to do an ICO
Right.
and raise that money without having to go through all of that regulation.
Right.
Unfortunately, some people are taking it a little bit too far and they're offering what some jurisdictions would call a security. And they're saying these are unregulated
Okay.
securities. These are not registered anywhere.
Right.
And that's becoming a bit of a problem because there's been a rash of that. And so
Gotcha.
that's a big topic that's going on right now. And that's something that we're working on to solve so we can help the industry grow and innovate rather than be stifled by regulation and jurisdictions that
Right,
have no
right.
idea what it is.
Right.
Capitalism is like a pyramid.
Okay.
And it's essentially that you consolidate the maximum amount of the resources, then you kind of let everything else trickle down. But the very idea of capitalism is based in so many ways on the idea of scarcity, not on the idea of shared prosperity. And if you think about a protocol, the way that it's designed and the way that people contribute, you have like server here and then node.
Right.
And all of these nodes are participating and collaborating and contributing.
Yeah.
And it's really a transition of the way we think about the distribution of resource in and of ourselves to allow people from all over the world to come together, to collaborate, to create value. And then once that value is created, to actually share in that value in a way that's equitable.
the secret, I think, is to not just follow the crowd into ones that have already had their big gain,
Right.
but instead look for undervalued assets.
Absolutely, yeah.
And when undervalued, that means ones that haven't had this big surge yet,
Right.
but there's something compelling about them.
Right.
Either you like what they stand for, or they have a competitive edge
Right.
over somebody else. They have a really good development team with a good track record.
Right.
These kind of things. Oh, and a good marketing campaign. If they've got a good strategy to acquire new customers and new users.
Right.
When you find the planets aligned
Yeah.
with all of that on something that hasn't had its big pop yet,
Right.
then that would be a good place to start.
Interestingly enough, I think, looking at where to invest in a cryptocurrency, I think about the exact same way as when I'm looking to invest in a company. I'm not just going to randomly, arbitrarily go into the market and just buy something without fully doing my research. Any project that seems interesting to me, I just go to CoinMarketCap, which is essentially the listing of every cryptocurrency that exists or that is made in the world and how much they're worth. And I'll click on the different things, like I'll look at the icons or I'll look at the names, and I'll just open up a million different tabs. And then I'll look at the way the markets are shaped, and I'll say, well, this looks interesting, and then I'll go to their homepage and I'll learn about the company. And when I learn about the company, I will always reach out and contact the founders directly. Every single time. If I can't get in touch with the founder of the company, and if I can't figure out how to do research into the team, I simply don't buy it because you can't trust it. So it's really, for me, at the end of the day, we're a human race. This is all about people. Life is all people. And so I have to get to know people before I can say I'm going to invest in this token in the same way that I would think about investing in a company. And if the founders, when I reach out to them and I say, well, what is your token worth, or why is this valuable? If I can't get a real answer from the founders, then I'm like, okay, well, this tells me, if I call someone and they tell me they don't understand their own business, then I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do here, right?
Here's what I know is that the BitShares blockchain in and of itself has had several companies that have launched using that blockchain, and these companies in the last 3 years are now worth a little bit over $1.6 billion within that 3-year period. What's also interesting about that is the BitShares blockchain is the most utilized blockchain in the world right now. It does more transactions than all of the other cryptocurrencies combined per day.
All of them combined per day.
Per day.
Wow.
And it has the ability to scale to handle literally all the world's financial transactions.
Right, that's a good point, because it does have a lot of industrial,
can
commercial
grow.
applications.
Right. What we see right now with Bitcoin is the network is saturated, and so they have to ration it by raising the price, maybe $4 to send a transaction versus 3 cents. So how does Bitcoin grow to the next bigger levels? Well, only by charging more. It gets saturated. When you go to BitShares, you've suddenly got lots of bandwidth to do lots more stuff. Lots more customers can come in and use it.
Right.
And I think you get the ability to grow to full-scale global operations.
So what I'm really interested in right now, and I think at the stage of the ecosystem, it's really about looking at infrastructure, right? Like if you had the choice, would you invest in Apple? Or would you invest in an app that Apple built on the App Store, right? Like in early days, you'd obviously invest in Apple. And so we're at that stage right now of the ecosystem where we're actually constructing these marketplaces of marketplaces where other people can come and they can build solutions on top of a core layer of infrastructure that's being created to enable dApps, which are decentralized applications. So one thing to just throw out there that is pretty interesting is EOS. So EOS has been called like the Ethereum for the East kind of thing. And
so when you say EOS, it's EOS?
EOS, yeah.
EOS.io.
EOS.io.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. All right,
Yeah.
continue. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No doubt. So it's, EOS.io, and they are a marketplace of marketplaces. Okay. And what's really cool is that because it's so new, they're doing a year-long launch of this thing.
Okay.
And because it's so new, I mean, the price is less than $1.
And they're releasing, 2 million coins a day? I
Yes.
think for another 200 something days.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Well, and I want to
choice,
point out
okay.
one other thing too, is that EOS actually was launched off of the BitShares blockchain.
Okay.
Right. So it's actually, it started from that blockchain and has been it's being coded out and everything like that off of that. So that's another.
Exactly.
You know, what's great about EOS is a couple of different things. It's the first blockchain-based operating system. Most blockchains cannot communicate with each other. They're not interoperable. What EOS is going to do is make it so that those blockchains, if they choose to, if they want to, can interoperable and can talk to each other, and it will tie them all in. So that's another example of a technology that's coming out that right now is undervalued because they're still launching, right? And so you're able to get in on the launch or even the secondary market, where I believe firmly that this is going to be a game changer in this industry.
Right.
And it's also, what's interesting about that, it's also by the same team that's done some of these other innovative breakthroughs in this industry, which is the first social media platform that's built fully on a blockchain.
Okay.
Which is pretty, I mean, that was groundbreaking.
That's called Steemit.
That's called Steemit, and that launched last year, officially on the 4th of July, I believe.
Nice.
You know, right? Independence Day for humanity, right? Because
like
it was
that
a new
analogy.
collaborative economy and social media platform, right?
Exactly.
Steemit is also in one of the top 10,000 websites that's trafficked right now.
Really?
And yeah, and
Already
it's
from July 4th.
already from July 4th.
Wow, okay.
And what I believe you're going to see is a mass exodus of traditional social media over to platforms like that, because they actually reward the users to create content and to actually interact with each other and curate each other's content and comment on it and things like that. So it's these types of technologies. Again, all of these are built on the BitShares blockchain or offshot off of that, that are making waves and doing things that are completely different, not just a token that's just exchanged around that has some sort of arbitrary value.
So let me tie it all together for you.
Yeah, absolutely, please.
At the operating system level, like where Windows or Mac OS or Linux might be, sits EOS.
Yeah.
Okay, and that is something that can tie lots of other platforms together and give you unlimited scalability.
Right.
Then, mounted on top of these, in the coming year when EOS is ready, BitShares will move on top of there and pick up unlimited scalability.
Right.
That's your exchange, and it has all of its own interesting projects, all kinds of designer coins, smart coins, interesting stuff. And then we just talked about Steemit. Steemit could move on to there too. EOS is the only thing that could possibly host something like BitShares or Steemit. That's how much more powerful it is. And then there's another thing called PeerPlays, which is for gaming, real-time interactive gaming. So all these have one thing in common: real-time action. It doesn't take 10 minutes or an hour to do a transaction. Things happens in seconds. And each of these technologies, whether you're doing trading or whether you're talking with somebody on a social media platform or whether you're playing a game, needs that technology. That whole family is, to me, an outstanding investment, and you can pick whichever one you like and get involved that way.
So that's amazing, guys. I want to thank you guys for showing up, doing this interview. I hope you guys learned something, because I definitely did.